Wednesday, May 13th. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee to order and ask the clerk to conduct a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Badaway.
Present.
Councillor Bateman.
Present.
Councillor Campion. Councillor Ganan.
Present.
Acting Regional Chair Grant. Councillor Greenwood.
Here.
Councillor Jordan.
I'm here.
Councillor Junkin. Councillor Morocco.
Present.
Councillor Olson.
Present.
Councillor Redicott.
Here.
Councillor Rigby.
Here.
Councillor Cisco.
Present.
Councillor Steele.
Here.
Councillor Witteveen.
Present. Thank you.
And we have regrets today from Councillors Foster, Kaiser, and Ugolini, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to call upon Councillor Greenwood to read us the land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you, Chair Seaborn. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis and Inuit, from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So for today's meeting, there are no items for consideration. We have an item here for consent. It is ED 5-2026. I'll call Blake Landry, Economic Research and Analytics Manager, for the presentation respecting the economic update. Blake.
All right, good afternoon, PEDC. As you are aware, I do this economic update twice annually to kind of provide an overview of what's happening in the regional economy. So as of today, Niagara's economy remains stable and resilient despite ongoing global uncertainty, including U.S. tariffs and geopolitical tensions such as the Iran war that's impacting both inflation and growth, both in the U.S. and Canada and throughout the world. So that's an important context that will be a bit of a theme through the presentation. For starters, I like to talk about just population growth. So Niagara continues to perform both Ontario and Canada in terms of population growth, with 8.3% growth from 2022 to 2025. Growth is expected to slow modestly in 2026 due to federal policy changes reducing non-permanent residents, including international students and foreign workers. As of right now, in the end of 2025, Niagara's population reached 551,000 people. So, in terms of inflation, it has largely stabilized near the Bank of Canada's 2% target after declining through 2024 and 2025. So it is currently at 2.4%. So since I've created this presentation, it has nudged up a little bit. However, comparatively, the U.S. inflation rate is currently 3.8%. So that is a warning sign for Niagara in that we could expect inflation to increase given the increased costs of things like fuel and food and everything that's being impacted through things like the tariffs and geopolitical tensions. So although we're currently at 2.4% and doing much better than the U.S., we can expect that that should go up in the future. So when I did the projections, that was 6 weeks ago, and things have changed since then. GDP growth has also slowed significantly. So Niagara's real GDP grew about 3.2% from Q1 2024 to Q1 2025, but slowed to just 0.4% from Q1 2025 to Q1 2026. So right now it is relatively low at 0.4%. Growth is projected to remain modest through 2026 as the trade and geopolitical uncertainty continue. Income is improving gradually. So employment income and disposable income continue to trail Ontario averages. However, the gap with Ontario continues to narrow as local income growth remains positive and higher earners also move into the region. So we are creating jobs, good jobs here, but people with higher levels of income are also moving into the region, which is improving that particular statistic. And same could be said about disposable income. So that is also growing at a slow rate, but it is growing, and the gap is narrowing with Ontario. So housing affordability has improved. So the benchmark home price declined by 7.4% to approximately $573,000 during this period. So improved affordability is expected to support consumer spending in the region, as well as help attract and retain talent and people who are looking to work and live in Niagara, and I'll address that in a little bit. In terms of consumer activity, it's remained strong. As you can see, it's been a little bit volatile over the past couple of years, but retail sales grew strongly through mid-2025 before softening due to tariff impacts and weaker consumer confidence. Moderate retail growth is still expected through 2026. So construction investment has remained a key economic strength in Niagara. Although residential construction is modest, as you could see here, non-residential construction in commercial and industrial saw significant gains. So here you can see the growth in commercial. Here you can see growth in industrial. And also institutional also remains very strong. And this is given some of the large projects that are currently ongoing in the region, such as the South Niagara Hospital and large industrial developments in South Niagara. So business confidence, just lately, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce released a business confidence report, and it is relatively low given some of the situation that we're in. However, entrepreneurial activity is relatively strong. So over half of the businesses are not confident in the province's economic outlook. So that was discovered in the Ontario Chamber's report. However, business counts increased in 2025, particularly among small and independent businesses without employees. So we're seeing still that business startup activity is still quite strong in Niagara. And we still did see growth in employer businesses as well by over 200 businesses. So in terms of labor force and employment, Niagara has been performing relatively well compared to Ontario and Canada. So as you can see here, employment is currently at about 235,000, while the labor force is at 253,000. And the gap in between are those people who are in the labor force but have not yet found employment but are looking for employment. So there's still a number of unemployed people in Niagara. However, it is much lower than Ontario and Canada. So currently, Niagara's unemployment rate is at 6% as of last Friday. compared to 7.6% for Ontario and 6.8% for Canada. So Niagara is still relatively low from an unemployment perspective, which is great. From January to April, Canada lost 94,000 jobs. Ontario lost 25,000 jobs, but Niagara gained 5,300 jobs. So Niagara actually gained during this kind of volatile period. And this can be attributed to local or sector-specific strengths, construction and infrastructure projects. So I mentioned some of those large industrial projects and institutional and commercial projects. Population migration into Niagara. So although population growth in Ontario and Canada has stalled due to lower levels of immigration, people are migrating into Niagara, and they're migrating here while having jobs. So that's improving our unemployment rate. Also sector mixes. So whereas Ontario is suffering from things like manufacturing losses, construction softness, as well as decline in educational services due to some of those things around fewer international students, Niagara is actually doing quite well, and the economy is currently being supported through tourism, through migration-driven services, through logistics and warehousing, as well as regional development projects, while the broader provincial economy has not seen some of these positive activities. So the participation rate, Niagara has always generally lagged Ontario in terms of participation rate. As I've mentioned, this mostly has to do with demographic characteristics, in that we do have still quite a few people in the 55 to 65 age demographic relocating to Niagara. And things like early retirement also actually decreases participation rate. So if someone's under the age of 65 and retired, they're captured as being the labor force age, but not participating. So it does impact our rate. And as mentioned, it has more or less to do with demographics and less to do with economic performance. So that is the update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Blake. Do we have any questions for our presenter? Okay, Councillor Witteveen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Blake, for your update. I always look forward to getting a state of I guess understanding where we are. I was in an irrigation meeting this morning, and there was a gentleman there, and he talked about the twinning of the Garden City. So looking at it as a 5-year project, and while it's going. So I guess my question to you this afternoon, Blake, is as that some of that work has already begun by moving utilities. Can you maybe break that out as we move forward? Because if this project lasts 5 years, it'd be nice to know project specific what that means to our local economy, whether that's more cement truck drivers or more steel that's rebar that's being used out of solid steel and things like that. So it would be interesting to know that $1 billion project, what it actually spins out into our community, and whether you can do that or not. So that's my question: whether you can actually do that in data collection.
So through the chair, excellent question. The way Statistics Canada collects data, like they do it on building construction projects where building permits are being pulled, and they're able to get receipts on construction activities. So that's how we're able to get information on like industrial, commercial, residential. They don't do the same for infrastructure. So it would not show up in the investment data, at least not at our particular level. So it would be more or less required at the provincial level to do that analysis. Furthermore, in terms of employment, so if the people working on that project live in Niagara, then that would be captured in the Niagara employment data. However, if they're working outside, if they live outside of Niagara but are working on that project, that would actually be captured in the employment data of the area where they actually live, as opposed to where they're currently working. So I suspect it'll show up in the economic data, but it'll be more of a provincial impact as opposed to a local impact, just given how the data is collected and how Statistics Canada defines economic regions.
Okay, well, thanks for that explanation, Blake. I think it's for myself and other committee members here. It's probably it helps us understand, where that how the data is collected and how that not that we see a bridge and we start seeing changes and we know that if we see changes while that project's going on, we now then understand where the numbers come from. So thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Woodavine. Next is Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering why homes aren't being built. I think St. Catharines, I was at a St. Catharines council meeting, and I think it was said that there were 11,000 units approved by the city of St. Catharines, but many of them just at this time are not being built. Can you speak to that? And if there's anything that the region can do to specifically, help get those builds along?
So through the chair, my report really focuses on the macroeconomic characteristics. I'm not in residential development, and our office predominantly works with industrial investors. So it would really need to come from the residential development sector. But I think a lot of that has to do with things like consumer confidence. I think a lot of it has to do with interest rates. I think a lot of it has to do with labor supply. A lot of it has to do with inflation. So when I say the inflation rate in the U.S. Just yesterday, they announced was 3.8% in April. Well, that has an impact on all of the construction materials, all of the labor, all of the inputs that go into construction projects. And residential is different than commercial, industrial, and institutional. So some of these industrial, institutional projects, those are multi-year projects. So we are just talking about the Asai Kasei investment in Port Colborne. Well, we're in year 2 of construction there. There's going to be another year or two more of future construction. So those projects are a little bit better insulated from some volatility in the international economy, whereas residential reacts a lot more quickly and is not over, they don't do the planning over that same time of trajectory of time. So right now, I believe a lot of it has to do with business and consumer confidence, global instability, tariff instability, the prospect of high inflation, higher interest rates, and those other characteristics.
Thank you, Chair. The reason I ask is, Mr. Landry, you had mentioned construction in your presentation. So thank you for the answer. I understand it a touch better more now that you've taken the time. Thank you. No other questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Next is Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have probably one of the very few people that are opposed to this bridge and why it's being built, primarily because we have better options that can be used to if you need to repair the Skyway Bridge. And certainly was the extension of the 406, bringing 406 across the canal, then moving directly to Fort Erie, and providing far better traffic issues and very not costly options that are available to the province. And frankly, I think Councillor Redekup and I were both at the same meeting. It seems like it was years where we were in a meeting with the powers of transportation. And the question there was, the idea of putting a bridge up, and they indicated that we've got 24 years before we'll be talking about that. Well, we were past 24, and that why that the province is going to spend that kind of money on a facility that can be used and can be done one way, because you have the option of moving traffic and moving traffic very easily through the 406 system. And yet, nobody ever talks about it. And they don't like to talk about it, that's for certain, because I have asked on a couple occasions and they just go blank. So we ought to be aware of that. And I recognize the steel is coming now, and this is probably too late, but I know that we have in past asked our staff to talk to them, depending on who it was, and they really just got a blank answer to it all the time. But I just wanted to make that comment because I don't want to go across that bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think his question there was, do you agree?
Yes.
Thank you then, Councillor Rigby. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Blake, for the report. Some good news and some maybe not so good news, but thank you for telling it like it is.
Thank you.
At this time, can I get a mover and seconder for item ED 5-2026? Councillor Morocco and Councillor Olson, thank you. Electronically, assuming there's no other comments, which I missed. Okay, that was carried. Thank you. At this time, then, I will call on Yosef Harazli, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialist, and for their presentation respecting Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan 2025, the progress update. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone here and online. My name is Yusuf Al-Harazi, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialist for Niagara Region. Today I'll be presenting on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan Progress Report for 2025. I will walk through the highlights of the DI Action Plan based on our focus areas. The 2023 Council Strategic Plan identified equitable region as one of the 4 strategic priorities, aiming to provide opportunities for a safe and inclusive Niagara by listening and responding to our community needs and planning for future growth. DEI and Indigenous reconciliation are also lenses for all of the strategic priorities. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan is one of the many plans and strategies associated with the Equitable Region priority area. The DI Action Plan has both a vision and a mission. The vision is that Niagara Region is welcoming and inclusive, where diversity and equity are reflected and valued. The mission is that the people of Niagara advance equity, build welcoming and inclusive communities and workplaces, while eliminating barriers and forms of discrimination. Our Accessibility Week event, pictured here, included the Alzheimer's Society Niagara Region, Liz Hay from the Accessibility Advisory Committee and the DI Advisory Committee, and staff from across the region to talk about how to eliminate barriers for people with disabilities in our workplaces and through our programs and services. As of the end of December 2025, the DI Action Plan has a 54% completion rate. Of the 44 action items, 17 are completed, 12 are progressing, and 15 are upcoming. 5 action items were completed in 2025. For the focus area, inclusive workplace culture, leadership, and accountability, Debbie Hunter, pictured here with Dr. Kazmani and Michelle Sergi, received the top CERT award in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion category for her work strengthening relationships with Indigenous partners and adapting our parenting program to respect culture, language, and lived experiences. The content for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Handbook is being reviewed by staff from across the region who contributed to its creation and will be transferred to an internal electronic resource guide. This will help Niagara Region staff integrate DEI principles into their daily work. Additionally, 3 Niagara DEI Community of Practice meetings were held in 2025, hosted by the Welland YMCA, the City of Port Colborne, and the DSBN in St. Catharines. There are currently 127 members in the Community of Practice, representing 87 community organizations. The inclusion charter for the Niagara DEI Community of Practice was finalized. It is now called our Guiding Intentions document. To increase understanding and humility through learning, the second year of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion training included mandatory e-modules for all staff on inclusive interactions. The module focused on inclusive communication, respectful use of language, and how to recognize and respond to microaggressions. At the end of 2025, 72% of all active staff had completed the Inclusive Interactions e-modules. The deadline for completion was March 31, 2026, where we had a jump in that percentage at an 86% completion rate. People leaders participated in additional 1-hour training on inclusive interactions with a total completion of 89%. 69 new leaders participated in inclusive leadership training through the Leaders Edge program. Additionally, 4 community events were planned in collaboration with community partners and advisory committees on DEI topics. The topics included pride, accessibility, and the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The Niagara Local Immigration Partnership provided training to 102 community members and Niagara Region staff on trauma-informed practices as it relates to service delivery, and 112 community members and Niagara Region staff on training active bystanders. For the focus area diverse workforce reflective of Niagara's community, results from the 2024 Employee Engagement Survey, including staff demographics, were included in the 2024 DEI Action Plan Progress Report provided to Niagara Region Council in April 2025. This was also updated on our public DEI dashboard. A learning series for community organizations on inclusive recruitment and hiring was launched in December 2025, with final sessions being facilitated in January 2026. 4 sets of facilitators provided training on anti-Black racism, creating inclusive workplaces for newcomers, disability education 101, and neuro-inclusive recruitment and management. These sessions highlighted challenges faced by different groups and provided best practice recommendations on how to reduce or eliminate barriers. The photo that you see here is the facilitators from the YMCA who provided their expertise about welcoming newcomers. In the focus area, looking at delivering programs and services that meet the needs of everyone, a mid-plan review took place in 2025. This involved gathering feedback from 143 community members at 11 different Niagara Region facilities, and also from 37 Niagara Region employees through focus groups. The purpose of the review was to assess the progress of the DEI action plan, identify what is working well, what gaps remain, and receive feedback from staff and community members for priorities for 2026. The photo you see on the slide is of 2 Niagara Region staff with surveys and information about the DEI action plan at a community event in St. Catharines. This next slide highlights 4 different ways that we provided inclusive communication in 2025. When we share monthly summaries of the spotlight dates of significant cultural, historical, and religious events, it is an opportunity to learn about these dates, and staff from different backgrounds and identities do feel recognized. These posts are shared with the local area municipalities on a monthly basis for them to use in their communications as well. The Stories of Diversity series continued to recognize diverse staff or initiatives that advance DEI in the workplace. In 2025, 6 employees were highlighted, showcasing individual stories as well as innovative DEI efforts within the organization. We also have a multi-year accessibility plan that ensures that all Niagara Region communication platforms are inclusive and accessible. The Niagara Region website is currently being updated and will be accessible according to AODA. In 2026, we continue to focus on finalizing and launching resources to support Niagara Region employees to integrate DEI principles into their daily work and services. We will continue to support people leaders in creating inclusive teams, including through the Inclusive Leaders courses and Leaders Edge for new leaders. We will advance inclusive and accessible communications through the multi-year accessibility plan, including finalizing the new Niagara Region website, updating information procedures, and inclusive accommodation processes. We continue to work with Niagara Region staff to recognize and showcase significant dates, such as this performance for Lunar New Year, which is on your screen, an event hosted in February of this year with the Chinese Cultural Foundation of Niagara. We have 4 flag-raising ceremonies planned for 2026, which of course you are all invited to. They will all be hosted at the International Plaza here at Niagara Region headquarters. Last week, we had our Red Dress Day flag ceremony, which of course is the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. The next 3 that are upcoming are Pride Month on June 1st, Orange Shirt Day, and the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence later on in the year. For further details or updates, you can view the report in Appendix 1, the public DI dashboard, which is on our Niagara Region website, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Niagara Region webpage, or you can email the DI team at diversity@niagararegion.ca. This photo that you see here is from the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence Candlelight Vigil last December, where we worked with a number of community organizations. With that, I thank you for your time and accept any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Does anyone have any questions for our presenter? Seeing none. Thank you. You must have done a really great job on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I get a mover and seconder then to, okay. Can I get Barb Greenwood and Tim Rigby? Thank you. Is there any discussion about the topic? Okay, seeing none. Then can I get you to please vote electronically? So that's been accepted. Thank you. There are no items for, excuse me, are there any items of new business that anyone would like to discuss at this time? I'm seeing none. Well then, the next meeting will be held on Wednesday, June 10th at 10 or at 1 o'clock at the Council Chamber Regional Headquarters. And being no other business to be for us, I adjourn the meeting.